Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel. It is now time for some meta predictions for NAIC. NAIC is going to be extremely crazy. It is going to be the biggest event of the year, and it is going to be a big tournament due to the fact that Palkia Evolved is legal, and we haven't really had that much testing for Palkia Evolved, really, with just the Puerto Rico SPE and some of the online tourneys, which isn't the exact same as playing a regional, though they do help give us some data for NAIC. But I'm excited for it. Let me know what you think will happen at NAIC, what decks you think will do well, what will win, and all that good stuff in the comments below. And leave a like if you enjoy the video, and of course, make sure to subscribe to the second channel if you haven't subbed already. And hopefully some of y'all will be at NAIC, and I can meet some of y'all. I'm excited to meet people at NAIC and all that good stuff. But without further ado, let's get into the breakdown. So we'll start things off. Get the main thing, the elephant room out of the way. Guardi is, of course, the BDIF for NAIC. There's a very good chance Gardevoir can win the tournament. It might even be my highest placing tourney winning deck, and I think we're going to at least see 2 or 3 Gardevoirs in top 8 at NAIC. Yes, Gardevoir is not too hard to counter, in all honesty. Like, there are ways to beat Gardevoir, but Gardevoir is just still an insane deck with reversal energy. Iono, reversal, really just upgraded the deck. And again, we're most likely going to see Gardevoir in top 8. Definitely going to see at least a couple, maybe 2 or 3, and it does have a decent chance of winning NAIC, but that doesn't mean Lost Box won't be far behind it. Lost Box is in a great spot still. It did win the Puerto Rico SPE. Well, again, we don't have the list. It's safe to assume that Turbo Lost Box / Kyogre Turbo Lost Box are both just insane right now. Lost Box will still be popular, and there's a good chance that a lot of the really big players are going to play Lost Box, and I think it's just very powerful for NAIC. If Gardevoir's not going to take down NAIC, there's a decent chance Lost Box could. Now, of course, Iono still exists, and Iono will still be an obstacle that Lost Box still maybe has to deal with. But overall, the deck is just still very good. And it's still a deck that can take down Gardevoir. Sableye is really good against Gardevoir. The Dragonite, Raikou are really good. And Drapion or Kyogre, whichever build of Lost Box you want to play, are just both still insanely good decks right now. Lost Box is still going to be everywhere. And there's a good chance you're going to hit Lost Box later in the tourney. Like, maybe the beginning you won't see as much, but in the later half, you know, you might see more. And again, if I'm going to put money on any other deck winning the tournament, it would probably be Lost Box or Gardevoir. One of the two have a decent chance of winning the event. We're probably going to see at least one Turbo Lost Box deck in top 8. But there's other variants of Lost Box right now. There is a Zamzinto build, which a lot of people are actually saying is maybe the best way to play it. The single prize build of Snorlax Zamzinto. Nice thing about Zam is it does a lot of damage, and it has a metal typing, which is pretty good against something like Xianpao. And you do have the Kyogre still and the Snorlax. I think the Zam build is still actually pretty solid overall. It doesn't seem like a bad deck, and I do think that this could still be something that is not as popular. Like, I don't think you're going to hit that much Zam Lost Box. There's even a chance you don't even hit a single Zamzinto Lost Box in NAIC, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Zam Lost Box deck creep into like top 16, top 32, because it doesn't seem like a bad play if you're going to play a Lost Box deck. It does have a lot of power with Zamzinto, good type with Zamzinto, and you still get to play the Kyogre regardless, so the deck still seems to be pretty good overall for NAIC. And then, of course, we got Sableye Cramsard. I'm pretty sure this got top 8 at Puerto Rico, and definitely is still a decent way to play Lost Box right now. The Charizard is still very strong. This deck does have a bit of a weakness to Iono. I would argue this deck is a bit more weak to Iono than the Kyogre build is, because at least Kyogre can play around Iono by just not taking more than 2 prizes, and then hopefully Kyogre can take 4 prizes to win the game. Whereas this deck does kind of rely on chipping away slowly, but I do think Sableye Cramsard is still a decent, solid play for NAIC. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a couple at NAIC do well. Maybe even getting top 8. I could see a Sableye Cramsard sneaking in top 8, kind of like I did at EUIC. And then we got Xianpao, which I think Xianpao isn't as good as everyone's making out to be, but I think it's still going to be popular enough that it will still warrant respectable placements in the tournament. I mean, it's obviously going to get day 2. I don't know if Xianpao can get top 8. I would put money on the fact Xianpao won't get top 8. But I will say Xianpao is still a deck that will be popular at NAIC at the very least. Whether or not, you know, the big players play it is up in the air. Like, I don't think any of the big players are going to play Xianpao. But I do think Xianpao is still going to see a lot of play because people like this deck. It's solid enough. It's got decent results right now, and it's got a lot of hype going into NAIC. And I think that's going to be the big thing to keep into account. I don't think Xianpao will make top 8, but I do think we might see a Xianpao in top 16 at best, maybe even top 32. But Champa will be popular at NAIC, and I think that is still a deck worth respecting. And then we got the Lugia variants. Both Single Strike and Snorlax Lugia, in my opinion, are both really good, and they both kind of do Similar things, but both are a bit different. The single strike build, obviously having the Urshifu, having the Tyranitar is pretty good. There is a debate whether or not Urshifu is needed in single strike anymore. The Urshifu is okay in the deck. I don't know if you need it in single strike, but single strike without Urshifu isn't bad, or with it, it's fine. Again, Urshifu is just kind of a dead card in stuff like Gardevoir and stuff, but it does seem that single strike Lugia is still good. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? And Iono's not a bad card to put in this deck either. I think that single strike Lugia having access to a card like Iono is also really strong. And yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of deck. It's like single strike Lugia gets worse going into NAIC. It's like maybe the one deck that kind of stays the same heading into NAIC is single strike Lugia. And then, of course, the Snorlax build is getting a lot of hype, too. My issue with this is it doesn't really have a good way to beat something like Champa and Duraludon. Those seem like bad matchups. I'm not sold on the Weird Ear either, but I do like the idea of this deck. It does seem like a solid deck. It has a decent Gardevoir matchup. I think it also is okay into, like, other fringe decks. I think it has an okay Lost Box matchup thanks to the Snorlax. Whether or not you want to play the Charizard or, like, a Radiant Serena is up to you to counter Lost Box, but Snorlax Lugia is a pretty cool deck, and wouldn't be surprised if a Snorlax Lugia deck did well. I don't know if we'll see Snorlax Lugia top 8. The more I'm kind of thinking about it, the more I'm really sold on Single Strike Lugia over Snorlax Lugia. Both builds are decent, and they both have ups and downs and positive and negatives. But I would definitely say, if I were to see a Lugia deck in top 8, I would probably see Single Strike Lugia in top 8 over Snorlax Lugia in top 8, but maybe someone will innovate the Snorlax Lugia deck a little bit further and get top 8, but I think that Single Strike Lugia has a higher chance of getting top 8. And then, of course, we got the Mew variants. I think that Fusion Mew is still the best way to play Mew heading into NAIC because it has an answer to Spiritomb, whereas Double Turbo Mew is a lot more riskier. Both builds are still, like, fine. Like, if Double Turbo Mew doesn't play against a deck with Spiritomb, the deck's actually still pretty solid overall. It's just Spiritomb is really bad for this deck, right? And that's kind of the thing that holds it back, whereas Fusion Mew can Ice Q the Spiritomb. And Ice Q is pretty good, too, against Gardevoir. In some regards, you can snipe off Ralston Curlius with Ice Q with the Lost City. And yeah, Fusion Mew is pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised if a Fusion Mew got top 8 either. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Mew got top 8. There's still going to be a lot of big players that'll probably still play Mew, because it is still one of those decks that people will latch onto, no matter how good or bad or how big of a tech card people are going to run for the Mew deck. Overall, I think that Mew is still going to run hot, and there will definitely be a Mew in top 8 at NAIC. I will, no doubt in my mind, say there will be a Mew in top 8 at NAIC. It's a very high chance of that happening. Again, Double Turbo Mew is a bit worse than Fusion Mew because of Spiritomb, because this deck struggles a lot more against Spiritomb, but it's still a deck that if you just don't hit people with people that play Spiritomb in their deck, Double Turbo Mew is kind of insane in my opinion, right? And then, of course, we got some other decks here, like Lost Tina. Now, this is a deck that does well in Japan, and then, of course, like I said, it comes to America, and the deck flops. But this maybe could finally be the time where something like Lost Tina does well in our new format Battle Styles on. Because, again, all the hype on Japan is good, but it just flops overseas. And I don't understand, and you know why? It's because Lost Box might just be better. But honestly, Lost Tina still seems to be an underdog deck. I mean, if your opponent flips over Comfy, you're going to just immediately assume, oh, okay, we got to play against Kyogre or something. But then they bench Giratina, and then it kind of makes things difficult. And Tina actually has okay matchups against a lot of the big decks. I mean, Tina is a very powerful card. Being able to insta-KO stuff is insane. Lost Impact is really strong. There's also a different style of Lost Zone deck. It plays Path and Iono and Roxanne, not, you know, Turbo. It's playing a little bit more of a disruption element to the deck. And I think that's one of the things that kind of makes Lost Tina difficult to play against, is if I'm playing something like Lugia, my opponent flips over Comfy, I'm like, all right, let's go. We got Snorlaxes for days. We're chilling. And then they're hitting me with Temple, Roxanne, and, you know, they're doing all this Tina stuff. It can get annoying. And that's kind of the thing that makes Lost Tina good, is it catches people off guard, and it also is a good deck in a lot of situations, and a lot of the big decks in the format might struggle against something like Lost Tina. So Lost Tina could sneak into top 32. I don't know about top 8. I made the prediction that Tina has a good chance of winning EUIC, and no, not even close. But maybe this time around we'll see a Tina deck at like top 16 or something. I wouldn't say top 8, but top 16 maybe. Then we got Arctina. Arctina is pretty solid. It's one of those just like straightforward, easy to pilot, straight, simple decks that has a lot of power and wins games because of Judge Path, Iono Path being very strong. It's the best Path deck right now in the format because it has the Bibarel engine. Bibarel is really valuable right now in the format because of how popular Iono is, and I think that's going to be the big thing with Arctina. I think Arctina is a pretty good play for NAIC. If you want to play something that is simple but under the radar, I would argue Arctina is your best bet to play it. Whether or not you play the Flying Pikachu is up to you. It has been doing decent in online tourneys too, which has been giving Arctina a little bit more of a respectable, you know, kind of name right now. Is its online performance isn't too bad. Will we see an Arctina get top 8? Probably not. Maybe top 16 at best, but we'll have to see where it goes. But I do think an Arctina player that runs hot can probably get top 8, but I wouldn't be surprised if it got any higher than like just top 16. And then we got the Arc Dura variants, Arc Vulpix and Arc Umbreon. Both builds seem kind of cool. The Arc Vulpix build is a little bit more reliant on your opponent not being able to do much against the Vulpix. I think the Alex Shemansky build is honestly pretty solid though for NAIC because again, you have the Drapion. Drapion kind of sort of replaces Umbreon, not really, but kind of does because you get a Dark Attacker and a Mew counter. Though I would still say that Arc Dura should just play Spirit Tomb. There's no reason why this deck shouldn't just play Spirit Tomb, even if you're using Drapion or not. But yeah, Vulpix seems decent against Gardevoir. Gardevoir doesn't respect Vulpix. However, if Gardevoir plays Spirit Tomb, then Vulpix sucks because they can go Spirit Tomb Zacian your Vulpix because Spirit Tomb would shut off Zacian's ability, which would allow it to hit Vulpix. So that's personally why I wouldn't play Arc Dura Vulpix to NAIC because I think that the popularity of Spirit Tomb is going to fringe on Vulpix's popularity, because if Guardi plays it, then Vulpix is bad against Gardevoir, and then you're basically just kind of an uphill battle against Gardevoir. Well, not an uphill battle, but you're just not as good against Gardevoir when you don't have access to the Vulpix cheese. Also, Memory Skip Iono is pretty tough to deal with, too. If I were to play Vulpix, I would honestly probably play a lot of switch outs, like maybe play 3 switch in total and a Jet Energy or 2, because I really do think that Vulpix struggles against Iono Memory Skip rolls quite a bit. But I would say this deck is still fine. A player can still run hot with this deck at NAIC because Vulpix is still a card that nobody really expects or, anticipates, and that's why we can still see a Vulpix do well at NAIC. But Arctur Vulpix still seems to be pretty good too, because Arctur Umbreon still seems really good. Umbreon is obviously great right now against Gardevoir. The Gust is nice. Duraludon's pretty good. This deck can still translate well into the new format. I do say, though, this deck struggles a lot against Xianpao. I think that's the one thing that scares me about wanting to play Arctura Umbreon is Xianpao seems like a pretty difficult matchup. But yeah, both builds are Dura. Both kind of do different things. I mean, the Vulpix is a bit more of, kind of you just pray your opponents and have a way to deal with it type thing. And Umbreon is a little bit more straightforward and aggressive. Both builds seem okay, but we'll see where Arctura goes. And then, of course, we got Tingloo. I actually forgot to put Tingloo on the tier list. I apologize for that. I kind of forgot about the deck, and that could honestly maybe be because of TCG Live banning it. I think that may be why I forgot about it. I should have put the Tingloo on the tier list, I know. But Tingloo seems like another sleeper deck. I think the big thing that makes it a sleeper deck, not only is it a deck nobody expects to see because nobody's testing for it because it's banned, it's also just a deck nobody cares about. Even if Tingloo is popular right now, as long as it's not like sweeping the online tourney scene up, I would still say that this would still be a deck nobody respects. But it's a deck that definitely can run hot and win games because of how powerful Tingloo can be at shutting your opponent down. The problem with Tingloo, though, I don't know if it has a good Guardi matchup. Once they get the Gardevoir EX into play, you're just kind of screwed because they have access to Gardevoir's ability, which allows them to attack Tingloo. But Tingloo is a deck that kind of beats everything around Gardevoir, in my opinion, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tingloo had a decent placement. Now, top 8 is a bit of a stretch, but who knows? I think that can be my wild card for this video. Maybe we'll see a Tingloo in top 8. Maybe. Big wild card guess right there. Rideon, another deck that people seem to forget about. I think it actually won a big tournament recently. I don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure this actually won a tournament. But yeah, no, I do think Rideon is still a deck people will play because it's Rideon. Turn 1 Donking is still really good, and in the format with like Vs and EXs being popular, Rideon isn't terrible. I don't know if Regieleki or Flaffy is better for the deck. I would still argue Flaffy is better. Because you get to play Magnezone V-Star. I think Magnezone V-Star is still a must-have in Rideon if you're going to beat Gardevoir. Rideon actually does seem okay. Like, its matchup against Xianpao is actually really good. I think this deck has a great Xianpao matchup. I think it has a pretty good time into like some arc decks, depending on whether or not you can donk them or not. But I really do think that it just needs to figure out the Gardevoir and Losso matchup, and that's why I think Rideon should still play the Magnezone V-Star to fix those matchups. And then, of course, we got the Sawyer deck. We're talking about some of the rogue decks now. We got the Sawyer Melbourne Luminous Energy box deck. Whether or not you want to call this a meme is up to you. This deck is really cool. I don't know if it beats Gardevoir. I think it's one win con against Gardevoir is the Mawile trap strategy, but I think Gardevoir is going to respect Mawile going into NAIC. But somebody might play this. This is a really cool and fun deck to play, and it's one of those decks that somebody might play just because they don't really care about performance in NAIC or don't care about the points, and they'll just play a deck to have fun, and who knows, maybe they'll get day 2. Honestly, if this deck gets day 2, I'd be very happy. Maybe this is my day 2 wildcard deck. If I'm going to say any deck's going to get day 2 at NAIC, I'm going to say the Luminous Energy box deck will get day 2 at NAIC. Whether or not you call it a meme or not is up to you, we might see it get day 2. And then Dialga, another deck that people seem to love to play. And this is another deck that just is beloved by the masses, but doesn't have the performances to back it up. But with Xianpao's popularity, this is a deck that can do well against Xianpao because you are a metal deck. And Dialga can still do a lot of damage in the format. I mean, Star Chronos is still insane against most decks in the meta. I think Dialga has a really good time into the Arceus decks if it sets up. I think Dialga is actually not a bad deck for NAIC. It's one of those like sleeper decks where you just have to run hot and you can definitely make day 2 with it. And if you have enough Xianpao too, you can definitely make day 2 with Dialga. Then we got to talk about the Palkia deck. This is another deck that's been kind of bubbling under the radar, is actually just a Palkia deck over Palkia Xianpao. As you can see, there is no Baxcalibur. It is playing Xianpao, but it is basically a Palkia Xianpao deck. It's more of a Palkia deck that uses Xianpao because Xianpao has Capacious Bucket as an ability. It's not trying to use Baxcalibur, but you can also use Star Portal and Melanie and stuff to build up energy for Xianpao in a weird way. So it's a deck that is kind of respectable, and it's a deck that maybe can get day 2. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if a random Palkia deck got day 2 that doesn't play Baxcalibur in it. And then we got to talk about Darkrai, another like hyped up deck from the new format. Darkrai got top 8 at Fresno. Will it translate in the new format? We'll have to see. The nice thing about Darkrai is it does have hopefully a good matchup against Gardevoir. Gardevoir can still obviously beat Darkrai, but I do think that convincingly Darkrai can beat Gardevoir potentially, and we'll have to see where it goes heading into NAIC. I don't know if it actually has a good Xianpao matchup, though, unfortunately, but Darkrai doesn't seem like a bad play for NAIC. Somebody will play it, maybe make day 2 with it. I don't know if they'll make top 8 again, but maybe day 2. If they hit enough Gardevoir and farm them, I actually think Darkrai can get day 2. Also, Muse, another deck that Darkrai can probably farm. And then finally, we got Guardi Mewtwo, another sleeper underdog deck that seems to be a deck that did well in Japan and then is starting to not do as well overseas. But it is a deck that I think in the right hands can actually be very hard to play against and beat. Like, this is a checkmate style deck, and I wouldn't be surprised if Guardi Mewtwo did well at NAIC. Whether or not it gets top 8 is up to you to decide, but I think maybe it can get like top 32, top 16, but getting top 8 might be a bit of a stretch. But Mewtwo Union does love NAIC. We saw last year Mewtwo Union got top 8 at NAIC, so it could happen again. Mewtwo NAIC, it's an interesting combo that seems to be a winning formula. So we'll see if Mewtwo Guardi can do well. It's a deck that I think in the right hands can actually be a very good deck, and if piloted by the right player, this could actually do well at NAIC, in my opinion. Also, nobody predicts a deck like this. And the popularity of Drapion is actually decreasing a little bit because of Spiritomb, and that actually does help Mewtwo, because one of the things that makes Mewtwo bad is Drapion. Drapion just it just beats Mewtwo. But with Drapion sort of falling off, there's actually reason to play Mewtwo again. Just saying. So yeah, that'll be it for me on today's meta prediction video. Let me know what you think of the meta prediction down below. Again, the deck that I think has the highest chance of winning is either Gardevoir or Lost Box. We're probably going to see a couple Gardevoir in top 8, 2 or 3 in top 8. We'll probably see a Lost Box in top 8. And some other wild card, again, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a Palkia deck, the Sawyer Melbourne Toolbox Luminous Energy deck at day 2. Would love to see it. Dialga maybe can get day 2 if it runs hot. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw some Arc decks. Maybe I think one Arceus deck will get top 8. Whatever variant is up to you to decide, whether it's the Dura decks or the Tina deck or whatever other Arc deck is looming out there. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an Arc deck at top 8 either. That might happen too. Arceus getting top 8. And again, I mean, another wild card suggestion, Mewtwo Union and NAIC. Again, good combo, seems to work before. Wouldn't be surprised if a Mewtwo Guardi deck did well, because in the right hands, this could be a pretty strong deck, because it is hard to play. And there you have it. Hope you all enjoyed this meta prediction video. I'm excited for NAIC. This should be going up on Thursday, so NAIC is literally tomorrow, so we'll have to see how accurate my meta predictions are, and I'll catch you on another video. Bye-bye.